All attendees are in listen-only mode. Muted. Unmuted.
Yeah, Pat, you might want to mute everybody again.
Yeah, Pat, you might want to mute everybody again. Yeah.
We're just waiting for a few more people to log on before we start.
So the mother knew that she was segregated by
Unmuted.
everybody. This is Pat Don, and I start a couple of minutes.
Muted.
We have about 15 people that are scheduled to be here. We have 6 so far. So just want to make sure that we have enough time for everybody because we have quite a few folks that are going to be here from the West Coast. So I just wanted to make sure that we have enough time for them to join us. I have a list here of who is currently available or currently signed in. And what I want to do, I'm going to call on one of you just to see if the verbal responses are working or not. So Peter, go up. Peter Luck?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, great. So we can, okay, great. So we can mute able to hear you. So the way that this is going to work is if you have a question on your navigation panel that should pop up, there should be an option for chat, C-H-A-T. And you can type in, you can move your cursor to the little text box and type in questions as they come up. I'll explain this again for people who join us a little bit late. But just in the sake of time, because we only have an hour, and if we're doing everything verbally, it's difficult, first of all, with 15 people, and also, you know, just for the sake of time, just so I can get all the material covered and get as many questions answered as possible. So if you have anything you need to bring to my attention or a question, just type it in the chat box, in that little text box, and then I'll see it, and I'll see who it was sent from also. And that way, I'll call on you when there's a break or when I pause in my presentation. So I'll be glad to do that.
Unmuted.
Well, again, just in the sake of time, why don't I get started and we can go over some things. So if somebody wants to try the chat function just to make sure that it's working okay, you could just type hi, or maybe that would be helpful if you can do that. Looks like Vinny's starting to do something. Great, Vinny's got hi. That's perfect. Excellent. Okay, that's good. That means that I know that this is working okay. That's good. Excellent. All right, so we'll get started then, and we'll just have a bunch of people that'll be coming in the middle of things, and you know, I might have a little bit of repeat to do, or they can just view it, because this, like I mentioned before, this will be taped and available, and there will be a YouTube link that will be sent out to the group. So why don't I get started? So welcome everybody. This is something new that we're trying. The online courses had not had sort of a classroom presence, if you will, because it was all online. So I thought that this might be something different that we could try, see how it works out. I think it works better than, even if you have a PowerPoint presentation that has an audio section that I know some of the instructors do, it still is not foolproof. It may be helpful, but having more interaction, I think, works a little bit better. So hopefully this will work out well for everybody. Okay, so our agenda, what I want to get covered tonight is 5 things if we have time. 4 things are the most important. The first one is just sort of like announcements and updates, and this will kind of be the outline for all the webinar sessions. And if these are useful for all of you, then we'll keep doing the webinars. They'll still be at the same time and the same date, and hopefully all will be recorded as well. One of the things that I want to do is to have announcements and updates if there's anything in the class you should know about, anything that will be coming up the next week, and I'll have a couple of those tonight. I'll review the course notes. I'm not going to read the course notes to you, obviously, but I'll just go over some of the highlights or the main points that I was trying to stress, just because I know that an outlined format can be kind of difficult, not different, but difficult for some people to pick up intent of what I was looking for. So I'll use this process to help along with those. Updates from group work. We haven't done any group work yet, but we will be starting that next week. And it'll be, for those of you, I know there's a couple of you that had taken my collective bargaining class, it'll be a different format than that. It won't be just answering questions and hopefully spurring a discussion between students, but it will be actual groups working together simultaneously on a common project. And there may be subgroups to that work if needed, et cetera, but we'll get into that a little bit next week when I open that up. But that'll be part of the regular agenda, though, is updates to group work. And then questions from students. We'll have a dedicated section after, sort of I go over the main things that I wanted to make sure that you got out of the webinar, that there will be time for students from all of you, questions from all of you, sorry. And then the last thing, if there's time, good and welfare announcements. And that's, if we have a couple of minutes at the end, then literally it would be the time that you would have, if you have a campaign going, if there's something good happened at work, you won a grievance, or there's a new organizing effort, or if you were reelected to an office, let's say, within the union. It's a time just to let people know what's happening. And like I said, that's more of a good and welfare announcement. I may have some of those also, just extra things that are not necessarily part of the course materials, but I just found that they might be interesting for you to take a look at if you have time and interest. I may put that under good and welfare, for example. So that's another part of the agenda. These will be sort of the common agendas that will follow every week that we have the webinars. So keeping the webinars orderly and on time, like I said, we'll use the chat function that will be like Vinny just demonstrated for us to indicate to me that you may have a question, and then I'll call on you. And what we're going to try to do is I'm going to try to, right now I have you all muted so that you can't hear each other because there may be background noise wherever you are. And I think there might be a slight echo. There's a little bit of a delay between me speaking and you hearing me. So that delay might be picked up too. But what I'll do is I'll call on you and we'll try the unmuting of the person asking the question and see how that works out. If we find out that it doesn't work out as well, then we might just go to typing them in the chat section and using it as that. But we'll do the best we can. This will be sort of a work in progress, but we'll try to make it as orderly and smooth as possible. So the methodology for the course, I covered this a little bit in the student lounge area where everybody was introducing themselves on the course website. And it's also in the syllabus and in the information about me that I have posted, just so you have an idea of who it is that you're working with. But the idea is that the course notes will capture the key theme that I was looking to have delivered for that week. That's the main thing that I wanted to have done. And there will probably be, most weeks, supplemental reading. Some of those will be embedded within the course notes themselves. For example, we're covering 2 weeks for this webinar, but like the very first week, there was a link to public sector collective bargaining laws, and it was an AFSCME website. There was an EPI publication about right-to-work research, sort of the union countering right-to-work arguments. In week 2, there was a little bit of both. Actually, there wasn't. It was all external links. So there were some external links on both that were listed on the course notes themselves. So you'll find some things that are highlighted as a link within the notes themselves and some that follow the notes but are part of the same week. For this purpose, week 1 and week 2. And you're expected to take a look at all of those. If you want to download them or print them out, you can feel free to do that. They're in the public domain. If you want to use those for any other purposes, I would just ask that you give the source credit, somewhere you list where you got them from. And that wouldn't necessarily be me because I'm getting them from another source, but it should say on the materials where they're from, whether it was from AFSCME or EPI or some other source. The text readings are then aligned with the course notes and the supplemental readings to the best I can. I guess it's not so surprising that there really are not a whole lot of textbooks out there that are about union organizing. It's sort of, unions are a little bit territorial, if you will, having been an organizer for a number of years myself, are a little bit territorial when it comes to sharing information and especially the methods they use to train organizers and approach workers. And it's not so much that they're keeping it from the employer, although that's part of it, but they're also keeping it from other unions because they're afraid that if the communication workers are starting to organize in a healthcare area, which they do in Western New York and my part of the world, that the Service Employees International Union will immediately jump into that campaign to try to stop them from expanding into their turf, as it were. I'm doing my air quotes with that. So that's one of the reasons why there's not a lot of materials that you can find openly or on a website to try to find books, textbooks, that sort of thing. So I found the best ones I could and aligned the readings the best I could. That's why you're not reading the book from chapter 1 to chapter 9 or 10. You're jumping around a little bit because it's following what I'm trying to get you to take a look at. So the course starts slowly, and this is a little bit different from, again, those of you who took the collective bargaining class that I taught in the spring. I kind of jumped right into the material with that one, and this one you're doing a little more reading and no group work at this point, but there's a good chunk of reading, and it's for a couple reasons. One, I thought it was a little bit better to get students into the swing of things, so that people can redevelop or develop study habits that they may not have had. I totally get the idea that you're all working people with families and personal lives. Amazingly enough, you have personal lives, and you have your union work, you have your day job if it's separate from your union work. You may have a staff union like I have that I participate in. So you have a lot of responsibilities, and I get that. So I have found that in the past, I would always get 3 or 4 students to the second or third week that would say, can I catch up? I haven't gotten my textbook yet. I had a crisis at work. So I thought just easing into the first couple weeks to see if that made a difference. And so far it has, actually. So that's the reason for that. The second one is late enrollees. We're up to 19 students, which is great for a brand new course. I mean, this is wildly exceeding my expectations. That's the good thing. The bad thing is one of the students just registered today. So this person's already going to be 2 weeks behind. And I'll be glad to, help folks that jumped on board a little late catch up if they need that. But it's, again, a reason why I decided to move a little more slowly with the first couple weeks of the course. And finally, I've never done this course. Cornell's never offered this course before, at least on an online basis. So this is something that is a little different for all of us. So I decided to walk into this a little bit more slowly, and as a result, something like the webinar that you're experiencing now came out of planning this as we go along a little bit to try to work things out to meet your needs. Okay. Snap poll. So I'm going to get some assistance from Alice, and Alice is going to the poll. And you can see the poll question is out there. And what I wanted you to do is I want you to select the answer that best fits why you are taking this class. Not why you were sent here, if your union's paying for it, or any other reason, but out of the choices that are given there in the SNAP poll, what is the reason that you are taking it? And we'll get the answers to that in just a minute.
We have 50% of you have voted already. %, 88%. I'm going to close the poll in a second. If any other people want to vote, please do so now. Okay. And Pat, can you see the numbers?
I cannot. If you can go ahead and read those.
Okay, we have 43% organizing new workers into new bargaining units. Nobody is here to expand a current bargaining unit, is organizing to expand. We have 29% motivating members to be involved with an issue campaign. 14% are here for motivating members to be involved in a contract campaign, and 71% for general knowledge and information.
Okay, great. Good. This will help me in figuring out our group work because I'm trying to figure out a scenario that would work for the majority of the people. And I think if it's a combination between organizing new workers into new bargaining units or to motivate employees to get involved with either an issue campaign. An issue campaign could be everything from an election campaign with a political election process to you have a subcontracting issue, let's say, and you're trying to get workers involved in stopping the subcontract, and you're trying to build a campaign around that. And obviously a contract campaign would be just that, working to be successful in the next contract or an upcoming contract. So that's great. That gives me the feedback that I need to do some more planning as the course goes along, and I'll make sure that the examples I give in group work are helpful for all of you. And I think there's a number of scenarios that deal with everything from organizing new workers to motivating people around issues or contracts, because obviously, you know, when does a contract start? You know, in my opinion, it starts when you had the very first contact with a worker in a workplace before the union was either recognized or certified as the bargaining agent, because it's that initial input that eventually lead, or should anyway, lead to the bargaining table. Same thing with an issue campaign. You know, when you're organizing a new unit, you're starting by looking for issues, and then you build essentially mini campaigns around the issues to try to show the success that collective action can bring about in a workplace. So the poll information is really helpful. Thanks for that. Okay, so let's get into the meat of some things here. So week one, as I start a lot of my courses, I think it's a good idea to get a legal framework. And I don't exist in the legal world. I mean, I always jokingly say that our staff attorneys with the union I work for are there to get me out of trouble, not keep me out of trouble. So, you know, the whole idea is, you know, if I live by the rule book exactly as it's written now, first of all, the union movement would be a lot smaller than it is today. Hard to believe, but it would be, because it's not made for our benefit. Originally, maybe it was, but it's been eroded very quickly starting in the mid-1930s moving forward. And the other thing is every case that the NLRB or Public Employment Relations Board, or if there's anybody in the federal sector, you know, every rule that is created doesn't fit every single campaign that's out there. And some of the stuff you have to, you know, tread new ground and try some things out and see how they work. And, you know, creativity and patience are huge hallmarks of any kind of an organizer. You know, whether you're in a staff position or an officer or a volunteer, they're all really critical. So what you have for like week one is you've got, you know, unfair labor practices. You know, basically, what are things you want to stay away from? What are things that the other side needs to be staying away from, or that you can catch them doing if it's part of your overall tactics in being successful? You've got in New York, because that's what I had the website for, was the public sector laws in New York, and then links to the other public sector laws for a state that you would be involved in. And so those were areas that had a lot of information on those websites. My expectation is, this is adult education, my expectation is that you're going to be digging around and use your creative thinking skills to jump in and look around at these websites that I have. You know, find out where the nearest NLRB regional office is near you if you don't know it. Where can I find cases and decisions? Where can I find a copy of the Act? You know, list of the employee rights. How can I sign up for emails from the NLRB or from your Public Employment Relations website if you have one in your state? That's really important for you to get used to doing, because I'm going to be around for 11 weeks. And then, you know, folks stay in touch with me here and there. But the bottom line is you're going to be, you know, jumping into your campaigns and looking to represent your folks in future battles going forward. And you're going to need to know how to dig into these resources to find the answers that you need. So that's why it's important that you dig around and use those critical thinking skills to find some answers, or at least find where the answers might be or who you can ask for help. So that was the first part of the week 1 assignment. The second part was about right to work states. And mostly because it's everywhere. I mean, we've got right to work bills, a bill in New York. It didn't go anywhere, but there was a right to work bill that was introduced in the state Senate in New York, the state with the highest percentage of union membership in the country. It was in Massachusetts. There was essentially a right to work bill. And we all know about Ohio and Michigan and Indiana and just the mess that's in the middle section of the country where the Republican governors are having a heyday at our expense, or trying to anyway, and making us basically spend down our treasury. So I thought right to work was useful. So what I did was I listed the right to work states, listed the states that have some kind of either anti-public sector union or right to work legislation currently pending, and then the EPI.org publications that really give a good battery of information that you can use to fight somebody who says, well, what's wrong with right to work? Why should you be forced to pay, you know, union dues? That kind of argument that they try to make. And then there were a couple of attachments onto that, which were 2 publications that were outside of the notes themselves, but attached to the overall the course notes page for the week 1. And one of them was a publication from an anti-union firm, but they have good information in there. And I'll tell you, I read all the stuff I can from the other side because I learn their thinking. I can start to think about what they may be planning in advance of my next move. Their job is to steal my thunder and to steal my headlines in front of my potential members. And that's exactly what I want to know. When are they going to do it? What's it going to look like? So that piece of information you had has good information, and it's basically training of managers of what they should and shouldn't do during union organizing campaigns. Again, good tools for you to know. And then the other one was a publication about right to work and, you know, all the glories of right to work and why we're such bad people by having people pay their fair share of dues for the services and the help that they get and for the power they gain as workers. So that's a little bit about that. There was a link to, you know, the AFSCME website for week 1. AFSCME has a really good website. I used to be a staff member for one of the New York branches here for AFSCME, the Civil Service Employees Association. I think one of our folks in class is a CSEA staffer. Actually, one of them is an officer also here in Monroe County where I am. So we got a couple CSEA folks. They have a good site. Take a look at it. They do have a member section that's password protected, but they have some good stuff too. So that's some of the course 1 highlights. Or week 1, I should say, I'm sorry. Week 2 was a little bit more into digging into the campaigns themselves, and as the weeks progress, we'll be digging more and more specifically into campaigns, communication, training volunteers, you know, actually what do we need to go out and make this a success. And I try to track the course in the order that I would start a campaign. So one of the things that I would do is to find out what's my legal background, what I can and can't do, especially if I'm newer to organizing, and that was week 1. Week 2 is, this is a big deal to me. 3 critical questions before beginning any kind of campaign. I don't care if it's a contract campaign, an issue-based campaign, or trying to expand a current bargaining unit with a campaign, or organizing new workers into your union. 3 critical questions. Is the union ready? Are the workers ready? And is the employer ready? And what do I mean by that? Okay, well, on week 2 of the course notes, you see under pre-planning the campaign, is the union ready? And I've got a number of bullets there to give you an idea of where I was going. Everything from, do you function well as a union with who you have now? Are you representing people in sectors that as a staff person, and I can relate to that, or as an officer, you scratch your head sometimes and say, why are we representing this kind of worker when we really don't do a good job at it? And I'm telling you, we have to be really honest about that. You know, we've been challenged by Teamsters in this area when I was organizing school support staff who had no background in school support staff. They were a trucking and warehouse union, and they had a brewery, and they do a good job in that sector. They don't know anything about school support employees or the public sector law, and as a result, we went up against them. I was the lead organizer 6 times in my geographic area, Western New York, and we beat them all 6 times. And what they got out of it was spending a lot of money on campaigns that were not successful, and the reputation that followed them was they can't win a campaign. And it's not necessarily true. It's just they were thinking public sector in New York is easy. These teacher unions are pushovers. How hard can this be? And they went up against people that really wanted to organize with us. And, you know, not in any way blowing my own horn, because it was the employees who had the votes, not me. So that's why it's really important you really look and say, is this where we should be going or not? You know, research assistant, can you do opposition research? Do you have any idea who the employer may use if they lawyer up or if they get a consultant? Do you have any information, or does your international on who the consultant is or who the lawyer, who the firm is they may use? Do you have a budget for this thing? I mean, because the bills are going to start rolling in hot and heavy for if you have tchotchkes or if you have literature, especially if you don't print in-house and you use union printers from the outside. You know, the good thing is they're a union printer and they have union wages, so they will charge you those union wages, and you have to make sure that you have the budgeting for that in a campaign. Can you get outside help from the international? When I was doing work with early childhood centers, AFT, one of our parent unions, had done extensive work and had done incredible literature production. There were really good shells that looked great and were very glossy, and, you know, they looked very professional, that I could add a lot of my own personal stuff to fit my campaign. Well, I don't have that locally, and NICET, my statewide union affiliate, doesn't have that, but AFT had that national. So I had some really good resources that I could use from the international. Again, it was the union ready for that. In this case, they were. You know, do you have a place for people to meet? Are you staffed up in terms of either volunteer staffers that are trained and have the time to put into it, officers or your current members if you're going to use them, or staff, professional paid staff if you have organizers that are paid? Are they split between 37 campaigns? I worked a campaign one time. There was a national campaign organizing 5,000 members, and they had one person coordinating that campaign nationally over mostly in the Southwest. It was schools that are run by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And it was a great campaign, and we won in the end, but the guy who was running the campaign was living in airports. I mean, it was not optimally the best way it could be. Those are the kind of questions you should really be asking yourself in terms of, are we ready for this? Especially if the decision is made at the local level to start more organizing. If this is run by a local or a district or something less than the international, you really have to be honest with what your capacity to organize is, and if you're ready in terms of all the things I highlighted on the course notes for week 2 under is the union ready? Are the workers ready? If you're coming into a shop that just voted no 2-to-1 against the union, but it was a different union, so you're saying to yourself, well, that wasn't us, and we're better than they are, so this shouldn't be all that hard for us to organize in this area, because after all, they did have, you know, 33% of the workers who said yes. So that combined with how great our union is, we should be able to win this campaign. One of the best ways to lose a campaign is to go in immediately after another union has just lost the campaign, especially if it was pretty bloody, because the workers are tired. One of the campaigns that I ran, again, this is not sort of the history of my organizing experience, it's just to share with you an example. It was a school, private school, and the workers were held every day for mandatory 2-hour meetings, which it was a school in the way that the law and the case law is written, they were able to do that. They had mandatory meetings, but it was exhausting for the teachers in this group. And I pledged to them when we went in, whatever the outcome of the vote was, we would honor. It was risky on my behalf. And what happened is we lost by 3 votes. It was a very tight vote. There was the potential of challenging one of the ballots, but it would still leave me 2 short. Now, some people could say you can dig around for something else that could make an unfair labor practice stick so that you can try to get the board to somehow, the National Labor Relations Board, to somehow overturn the election. The problem is I had trust with those employees, and that trust would have been out the window. So remember, the employer has several opportunities to stop us in a campaign. And one of those is before we circulate cards, authorization cards, while we circulate authorization cards, they can try to stop us. While we're filing a petition and cards, they can try to object and stop us there. During the whole election process, there's 1,000 ways they can try to stop and delay and roadblock the campaign and the vote, assuming you're going through traditional NLRB processes of the vote. And then they could file objections after the vote. And then they can delay the start of the first contract forever. Remember, we only have that sole and exclusive right to represent those employees for 1 year. So these are some tired folks. You're going to be tired. Your officers are going to be tired. Your staff's going to be beat because they haven't seen their family for any meaningful meal in months. So it's tough. That's the only thing I'm trying to say is you have to make sure the workers are ready for this. And don't base it on the amount of authorization cards that you have signed, because in that one example I just gave you where we lost the vote by 3 votes, we had 75% of potential members signing authorization cards. They just get you in the door. They're a piece of the campaign. They're not the campaign in itself. And if you bet on authorization cards to win the day, unless you've got a neutrality agreement with independent card check, that is a third party privately counting the cards and the employer honoring a simple majority of votes, which if you can get that, that's great, but it's not easy to get. Don't count on it unless you've got that kind of a situation. So take a look under week 2, the notes that I have for Are the Workers Ready? That was my intent on there. Think about modern day union. I mean, the joke used to be is all I need is a phone book and a pencil and I can organize anybody. You know, that was sort of the 30, 20 years ago thinking. Now it's, do you have a blog? Do you have a website? Do you have a Facebook account? Do you have a Twitter account? How to use new media? Do you have a new media organizer? You're actually someone dedicated to managing your new media, including email accounts through, MailChimp or, one of the groups that are out there, or electronic surveys through SurveyMonkey or any of the other survey tools that are out there for free. Do you know how to use any of those kind of things? You may or may not. You have to find out if you're ready for it and if the workers are plugged in that way. Is the employer ready? A lot of people say, well, who cares about the employer? Well, if you're an organizer, you should care about an employer, no matter what kind of campaign you have, whether it's a issue campaign or contract campaign or you're expanding a bargaining unit or you're doing new member organizing. If you organize somebody that has, let's say, a private sector company, for-profit, publicly held, and their stock is tanking and they look like they're a mess going, Kodak, just to pick a local here. If you're trying to organize Kodak just before they filed for bankruptcy, a little over a year ago, well, good luck. You may have a great campaign, but you're never going to get a first contract. And do you know that? Is that a reality you know? You may be able to get a unit certified, which is great. Do you have anybody in your union who can negotiate a first contract in that sector, though? Those are the kind of things you got to think of with the employer. What's their leadership style? Are they neutral? Are they hostile all the way? Are they maybe not pro-labor, pro-union, but they're not going to give you a hard time. They're going to be reasonable. And if you can find those, let me know where they are. Do they have leadership that has experience with unions? Are there other unions with this employer? What's the experience like? Are they considered sort of in the back pocket of the boss or not? Just sort of what's the scuttlebutt out there? Are there any distractions they have, like a budget process or financial issues or internal or external politics within the company ranks? That is, the management ranks, or with their stockholders or their officers or board members. Do they have marketplace problems with an aging product that's not keeping up and they're not innovating, meaning that you may not have work down the line, and as soon as they lay the first person off, everybody's going to look at you and say two things. One, is this because we now have a union shop? And number two is, how are you going to get us our jobs back or stop us from being laid off? Those are tough questions in this economy and with the current law that we have around some of the decisions with those kind of issues. Do they have big political allies? Are they, a big deal in the area? Been there, done that as well, where we had major benefactors to groups that we were trying to organize that said that they were going to hold up funding. Maybe there's something we could have filed in terms of an unfair labor practice, but would have held up the campaign, and it was not in my interest to hold up the campaign. Because again, the longer you delay, it helps the other side. So that's sort of the three key points of, is the union ready, or the workers ready, is the employer ready? Really important things to think about, and to really be honest with yourself, with your organizing team. If you've got somebody above you, an organizing director, or someone from the international who hopefully is open to good criticism, because if they're hiring you, they should be hiring you for your brains as well as your brawn, and they should be listening to you. And that's one thing I always tried to do with my organizers, that if they said this is going nowhere, it's a dog, I wanted to hear all the reasons why they thought it was. What was I missing? What didn't I see? And hopefully there will be folks listening to you, and if you have folks working under your supervision, that you'll listen to them in the same way too, because they can see things you're missing, and we're all about collective power, and that means listening to the collective, the group of us that there are out there. Okay. Why be ready with all this? Well, here's the reason why. So there was a guy in the 60s named Bruce Tucker. He came up with different models of group dynamics, and I learned them back in organizational psych class back at the hallowed halls of Lemoyne College, where I got my undergrad in industrial relations. And these are sort of the 4 points of the initial 4 stages of any kind of a community, whether it's a union or your neighborhood or what have you's life cycle. These are the initial stages. There's forming, which is new people trying to figure out who's who and who's a leader, and talking to, looking for leaders. Now, it doesn't mean that they're always going to look for you as the leader, or the organizing committee that you put together. There are also people known as natural leaders, and those are kind of opinion leaders within every workplace. And they're going to be looking to those people also, and you want to be looking to find out who they are as well. But forming is a key point. And then storming, and that is, you're going to have competing ideas. Some people say, no, this should be the priority. No, this should. Hey, by the way, how come we don't have these other employees included in the bargaining unit, our proposed bargaining unit? We should have these. There's going to be storming, some real diverse opinions that are not always going to be in agreement with each other, and that can be a real problem. It can turn people off if they're like, I've heard this is what unions were about. They're just about causing trouble. We were better off just when we had management alone. They fixed our problem, that kind of an argument. Norming, and that's when people sort of figure out, okay, this is the way things are going to work. I'm used to what this union thing's about. Our mission's defined. Groups of people or cliques are formed. You kind of have to identify who they are and what their interests are. And then the last one is performing, and that's hopefully those groups of people can collaborate towards the common goal, which would be building a strong union and then building a strong enforceable contract, and then moving on being a dynamic union after that, continuing the life cycle. So if you're not ready, back to, is the union ready? Are the workers ready? Is the employer ready? And this is happening. It has the potential of being either a train wreck at worst, or at least a bad tornado. So just the more prepared you are at the front end of getting into this kind of an issue, the better off that you'll be as you go through the process of having the initial conversations with their workers, and then testing them to find out if they're willing to risk a little bit in order to help the common cause, that is, sign a card, sign a petition, whatever your technique is and your tactic is that you're using. Just understand that a lot of these different stages are going to be happening well before any kind of an election or a card check or any of that kind of stuff. Just be aware of it, that this is all happening at the same time. When you're trying to figure out who they are, they're trying to figure out who you are as well. And the employer is going to be paying you while this is just within the union. And then you throw an employer and the public and the crappy media and everything else on top of it, and it makes for a fun way to make a living. All right, strategic plans. Some unions use them, some unions don't. At my union, I taught strategic planning as part of something we called our Leadership Institute, which was, we saw at one point about 12, 13 years ago that we were going to have a large turnover of leadership of our locals over the next, back then it was 8 or 10 years, just due to retirements, that sort of thing. People were going to be aging out of the union. And we had to find a way to bring in the next generation and the next generation of leaders. So the officers were great in putting together the idea of a Leadership Institute, and I was one of the staff people that worked it. And it was in conjunction with Cornell University's Labor School, the ILR, and it was actually held for a number of years at the ILR school itself. We're fortunate to have them in our state. So we use this. We had a vision statement. That is, what's the big picture description of our union? It's sort of the preamble. If you look at the preamble of the U.S. Constitution, it talks about very broad, big themes that are great because they're pretty easy for people to get around and agree on, because they're like, the Communication Workers of America loves puppy dogs, vanilla ice cream, chocolate sundaes, and sunny days during the summer. I mean, it's the big stuff that it would be hard to argue against. The mission statement is much more succinct, and I think if it's boiled down into answering these questions, it's much more effective than having, I've seen long drawn out mission statements that I think are pretty difficult for people to get around and understand. It's simply who, doing what, for whom, and why. We'll practice that when we get into the campaign itself, our group work that we have, but you want to think about that. Who, it's going to be the name of your union or the kind of workers you represent. Doing what, you're representing people, are you empowering them, what words, what verbs do you want to use. Doing what for whom, what kind of workers are you representing together, or is it with their community also, and why are you doing it, why are you bothering with all this stuff. So those are things to know about. So it's the mission statement is then supported by, or the vision statement is then supported by the mission statement. It's more nuts and bolts. Even further more nuts and bolts that support the mission statement are goals. And they're simply steps to achieve your mission. In order to achieve the who, doing what, for whom, and why, we are going to do the following things. Now they may be the following things for the next 2 weeks, the following things for the next 3 years, the following things for as long as we're a union. Doesn't really matter, but these are our goals. These are the things that we want to achieve as a union. And then there's strategies. Strategies support goals. How will you achieve your goals? There are specific actions that are needed in order for the union to achieve its goals. And then, again, further rolling that out are tactics. And tactics, and this is the one that we deal with the most. Probably strategies and tactics are the two things that frontline organizers deal with the most. And a tactic is simply flexible, specific actions or series of actions, normally, usually short-term, that work in concert with each other to achieve campaign strategies. This is the bread and butter of what we do. This is our creativity. This is where we get to use our mind at 100% and really think our way through a successful campaign. What are we going to do specifically? We're going to have a meeting next Tuesday to discuss this. From that meeting, we're going to have a petition that we're going to pass around and have people sign in support of a goal, et cetera, et cetera. It's specific things that you can adapt, that are flexible. You're going to react to how the employer reacts to what you're doing, et cetera. So that's really key, is the vision statement supported by the mission statement, supported by the goals, supported by the strategies, supported by the tactics. Group work. Okay, so we're done looking at the specific course notes that we had. And again, we'll get to a section for your questions coming up. But I want to get into group work that we're going to be having. Again, if you took the collective bargaining class in the spring or previous spring that I teach, group work is something that we do, which is I post a series of questions based on the readings and the discussions that there have been in the past about a given topic, and we have a discussion within that board area on the website, course website, and discuss it. This is going to be a little bit different because we're all going to be working together. So as I'm envisioning it now, at the campaign headquarters, which is one of the buttons on the navigation bar that you've been using, the class will act as one organizing committee. I will be the campaign manager of the organizing committee, and I will also supply the initial facts and supplemental scenarios for the campaign as the campaign ensues, as it rolls out. So if the employer reacts a certain way, if something happens in the media, realistic as possible, I'll be the one that announces that, and I'll probably be doing that starting this Monday, and the campaign headquarters will be open for business, and you'll see changes to the scenarios and more information as they're available every Monday. So you'll be noticing the course notes will be posted every Monday, and the campaign headquarters new information will be posted every Monday. And then you're expected, again, along with the readings that you have and the other work that you have to do within the course notes, you'll be expected sometime during the week to check into the campaign headquarters and play your part as it's defined, you know, as we go along with the campaign. Yeah, check in Monday for details with that. You'll be a critical part of making this a success and to make it as realistic as possible. Because again, this is sort of a newer way that I'm looking at doing this that I'm hoping is a little bit more realistic. It's difficult to talk about organizing online because it's not something we do. We can make initial contact to an extent online, but it's not something we do that is, you know, we don't have only an online campaign and be successful. It's very rare. It's a way to find out where workers live, contact them in a way that might be a little more private for the employer than the employer finding out you're talking with them, give initial one-way information through a website or a Facebook page, etc. You can do those kind of things, but I'll try to make this as realistic as possible in this way. All right, so that's the material that I had to cover tonight. My clock here in New York is saying it's 8:50, so we have some time for any questions about the course notes or any of the material that I just presented now. And again, if you look at your navigation bar on your screen, you'll see that there will be a section for chat, C-H-A-T, and there will be a text box that you can type in. Vinny was nice enough to already be our spokesmodel and demonstrate it for us by saying hi. So if you want to do that, you can do that and let me know you have a question, and I can then call on you, and if you have a microphone, I will unmute your individual mic, and you can actually ask the question that other people can hear you speak, and then I'll mute you again after that. So does anybody have a question about the materials or the course notes or anything I went over tonight? Just feel free to use that chat section to type that in, if you have a question, or you can even type in the question if you want. Give you a couple minutes to think about that. Okay, not seeing anybody typing, not seeing anything, so maybe we're good for tonight. I mean, this was just basically a way that we can interact in a way that isn't just, a couple people emailing me here and there, or, having some discussion in the group discussion area, which is fine, and that's good, but I just thought, a human voice to this process might be a little bit easier also. Okay, so then if you have any questions, as I continue on here, feel free to post, and I'll keep watching for that. Okay, so good and welfare is the last section that we have of the class, and that is, we'll have this every week, again, if there's time, and that is there anything that you'd like the rest of know? And again, that can be anything from, hang on, maybe I missed it. I did, I'm sorry, I missed Ken's question. Sorry, Ken. Okay, Ken, what I'm going to do is I'm going to unmute you so you can ask your question. Maybe that will work a little bit better. It's not unmute Ken. Okay. Okay, that's fine. So he has campaigns. The unions have made themselves very comfortable with the employers. That relationship is a mutual one. We, the employer, let you win if you don't fight, and you in turn let us win what we want. When the employers know that the union will fight for what will fight, then the employer fights and uses the best weapons they have available today, and that is the NLRB. All you have to do is to appeal and appeal and appeal. Right, exactly. Employees who do win their elections, they grow tired of waiting for the appeals, and they're weakened through the process. Absolutely, they are. The NLRB is weakened, and the employees don't want this thing to go on and on forever. Exactly, and that's one of the points that I made earlier. So, Ken, you're right on that people don't want it drug out forever, and if there's a union that's willing to fight, the employer is going to fight. If it's a comfortable relationship, and it's one that it's mutual, they get some, we get some. Sometimes that happens. In organizing, it's pretty difficult for that to happen too. But yeah, that can happen. Let's see if there's a test from Peter. Okay. I think that was it. I think it was just Ken had that one comment there. I'm not seeing any others.
There's something from Vinny. Vinny said that the NLRB app for the smartphone was a great tool.
Good. Here's the thing with the NLRB app. That was actually a brand new one. That actually worked out really well. So I appreciate the feedback on that. And you'll notice, if you haven't already, the course itself has an app also. There are some down parts to the app. It's good because if you just want to get an idea of what the reading was and you want to take a quick look at the assignment page, it's great for that. You don't want to get into conversations or long, detailed discussions though, because it's just you're typing on your really small screen. It's better if you have a larger screen device for that. That works out a lot better. Okay.
And there's a comment that there are a growing number of voluntary recognitions.
Who's that one from?
That's from Ken.
Okay.
It's under the questions tab instead of the chat tab.
Yep, I see that here. And that there can be voluntary recognition. You just have to have the employer willing to do that. And again, employers that are willing to have that kind of a relationship up front is rare. If it's growing, it's because there has been a broader tactic that has brought it about. We'll talk about that late in the campaign, but community campaigns, corporate campaigns, however you want to call them, they have forced some employers to reckon with the union in a different way. There have been some telecommunications unions that have tried that as well with Verizon. There was an attempt with the union that represents AT&T to have a neutrality agreement with Verizon. Verizon never really lived up to their end of it, and it didn't happen well. So there's good and bad as far as how that it's actually happened, or if it was successful or not. Okay. So again, good and welfare, it's something that if you have something to post, go ahead and post it. I have one on here. I'm not sure of the source of this, so that's why I didn't assign this. But it's interesting to look at because it has a lot of information about what Union Busters, and if you know the Union Busters handbook, the video and the book that went on with that from a sort of a converted corporate raider. He's got some video snips in here, but others do too. He's died since. But it's not an official part of the course. It's not any kind of mandated reading. Just something I ran across that I thought you might be interested in. So if you want to look at unionbusting101.com, it says that it's made for union members and organizers to use. Again, I don't know where it's from. It doesn't say on it. So that's why I just left it here. Is if you want to look at it, great. If you don't, that's fine too. Okay. And I think we have 2 minutes left. That's sort of the last thing that I'll have in the class. So this is sort of typically how I would see the webinars going. I would really appreciate your feedback. If you thought that there was value in these sessions, you can just throw me an email. That would be helpful so that I would have an idea of how things went. And if you have any questions at any time about the course, don't hesitate to contact me. By email is always the best. Check my email a bunch of times a day. I try to get back within 24 hours, even if I'm traveling. The joy of smartphones. And I look forward to working with you guys and hopefully you guys working well with each other. And I'll be posting new material under the campaign headquarters and the course notes on Monday. And if there's anything else that comes up between now and then, give me a shout and we'll talk to you soon. Hope you have a great night. Thanks.